Hi BookTube, it's Amy. I'm here to start another reading aloud series. When I was back in Kitchener-Waterloo this past week, I had gone into the St. Jacob's Antique Market and I picked up this book from 1901 by Emily Lawless. It's called A Garden Diary, and it is indeed a diary. Now there was a little card that came with the book. It just appears to be a printout of the Wikipedia entry. But it says, the Honorable Emily Lawless, 17 June 1845 to 19 October 1913, was an Irish novelist, historian, etymologist, gardener, and poet from County Kildare. Her innovative approach to narrative and the psychological richness of her fiction have been identified as examples of early modernism. And then it goes on to give a little bit of information about where she was born, Lyons House below Lyons Hill in County Kildare. It says she spent her childhood with the Curwens of Castle Hackett in County Galway. Her mother's family. So that was her mother's family there. And she drew on themes of West Ireland in many of her works. And so I don't know anything beyond that about her. I'd never heard of this book before, but I came across it, and it is indeed a diary. And I do like diaries, so I thought I would read this aloud here. And it covers the time period of September of 1899 to September of 1900. And there's our title page. So this was published by Methuen and Company of Essex Street, London in 1901. We have a dedication here that says, to the garden's chief owner and the gardener's friend. And so I do wonder who that would be. A few leaves from this diary, or something very similar, have already appeared in The Garden and The Pilot. The Garden is italicized, so that must be one work. The Pilot is also italicized, so that would be a second work. So here we go. The first entry, A Garden Diary, for September 1st, 1899. A wanderer is man from birth. And some of us who have done comparatively little wandering in our own persons have done our full share of those less palpable divagations which may be performed within a very small compass of the earth's surface, nay, even within the radius of a single garden chair. The gypsy dies hard in many people, and the dreams which have fluttered round our youthful fancy flutter round it still, though youth may have become a memory, and the chances of any serious explorations be reduced to a scarce perceptible minimum. To be a traveller in the real and heroic sense is a very great and a very stirring ambition. To have the hope of wandering far and fruitfully, of bringing home the results of those wanderings, such a hope and such an aspiration is one of the biggest things that can be set before a youthful ambition. With a regard of probabilities, which, looking back, I can only characterize as magnificent, such an ambition had I, in early days, set before myself. To be a traveller on the great scale, a visitor of remote solitudes and practically untrodden shores, a discoverer of undescribed forms, a rifler of nature's still unrifled treasure houses. Such was the hope, and such the happy dream. The words unknown to science floated in those days before my youthful fancy, and were to it as shibboleth as other and more obviously stimulating words have been to other youthful brains. Fate has not willed that any such resounding lot should be mine, nor was it, to tell the truth, particularly likely that it should so will it. Too few of our race has it been given to add even a little to the knowledge of that race, and I am not aware that any portion of my own equipment had particularly marked me out for this role that I had so confidently assigned to myself. Luckily, we learn to grow down gracefully, as the sedums and pennyworts do. A lot that, at 10 years old, seems unendurably pitiful in its narrowness, at 5 times that mature age, comes to be regarded as quite a becoming lot, leaving room for plenty of easy self-respect, and even for a spurt or two of the purest and most invigorating vanity. As that down-growing process advances, we assure ourselves more and more confidently that all the really important, the vital parts of such exploration belongs to us, at least as much as to the explorers themselves. If we had not thridded Amazonian forests in our own persons with Mr. Bates, or Nicaraguan jungles with Mr. Belt, we know all that those indefatigable travelers have seen, done, discovered, experienced, and only need to take down their books from the shelf to be in the thick of those experiences once more. So too with the rest, the botanists, zoologists, paleontologists, greater as well as less great. With the prince of them all, one starts once more upon that immortal voyage of the Beagle, which, besides circumnavigating the world, enables one to accumulate those prodigious stores of observation, destined by and by to make one's own name famous to the world's end, and to endow that world itself with 1 or 2 practically new departments. With Professor Wallace, one spends years in the Malay archipelago, till the geography of even the obscurer members of that bewildering group becomes rather more familiar than that of the next parish. With Collingwood, one pores over the rock pools of Chinese seas, which never before reflected human face, or at most that of some shore-haunting Mongolian uninterested in zoology. With the savants of the Challenger, one sets forth, with all the pomp of subsidized science, upon a 3 years' cruise in search of Globigere? I don't know that location. Globigerin. And then it's that A and that E that are connected. Of blind decapita, of cocospheres, of rhabdospheres, and other long-titled occupants of abysmal depths. And if one has been tempted to now and then share the dismay felt by the youthful lieutenant upon being shown that single teaspoonful of grey slop as the result of nights of toil, which kept the whole crew of Her Majesty's ship from their bunks, well, one reflected that the wise men probably know what they were about, and that the teaspoonful in question could hardly be an ordinary teaspoonful. Later, hand in hand, one has journeyed with other travelers, some biological, others merely exploratory or geographical. With Stanley, groped for weeks in African forests and been shot at by unpleasant little beast with hands. With Miss North, travelled far yet unweariedly, in search of unknown flowering trees and other forms of vegetation. With Nansen, until one grew to feel brittle as any icicle, and occasionally almost as callous as one. With Mrs. Bishop, across many seas and scenes, and last of all with Miss Kingsley, the only one of these illustrious travellers in whose company I have always felt entirely secure, sure that no dangerous animal, lion, rattlesnake, cobra, German trader or the like would dare molest me while under their aegis. Yes, I have been a great explorer. The earth and its multifarious contents has lain below my feet, as the Pacific was believed by Keats to have lain before those of Cortes. And if now and then I have been troubled by a passing doubt, a wild surmise as to whether all these places really have been seen by my own eyes, I have made haste to put that misgiving aside, as His Majesty King George IV was no doubt in the habit of doing, whenever similar misgivings as to the heroic part played by himself at the Battle of Waterloo crossed the royal mind. To have been so far and to have seen so much is good, but to have retained a lowly spirit with it all is even better. To be able, with Alphonse Carr, to set forth on the 501st tour round one's garden, brimming with expectation, and all the certainty of new discovery. To be as thrilled over the alternations between the nut tree walk in winter and the alpine heights in summer as ever the family of the vicar were over those between the blue parlour and the brown. These are the things that really carry a traveller comfortably forward in an easy jog-trot towards his predestined bourne. And if there happen to be a pair of such travellers, a pair of such explorers, and if each of them carries his or own wallet or knapsack, and if those two travellers part often, yet often come together again, then what an opening of budgets takes place. What a retailing of adventures, what a comparison of discoveries, what a vastly extended sense of the round world, and of all the fullness thereof. That there are really great journeys to be performed, great events in life and great adventures to be met with, I am quite willing to concede. Also that there are very small journeyings, very small events, and very small adventures. But the odd thing is that no one seems ever able to decide for one finally and authoritatively which is which. And so that's the end of that entry for September 1st. This idea that I've come across in many a book where someone's talking about their reading in their library, where the mere act of reading these travelogues and these journals and these accounts of journeys are almost as good as having traveled there yourself. And it's evident that she was experiencing for herself these little journeys, this little version of these big journeys in her own garden, which in a way, that's what we do in our very own reading chairs. And so the next entry will be for September 4th of 1899. If you enjoyed this reading, do let me know. I'll continue on with a few more of these chapters, see what kind of response I get to posting this, and see whether it's something that you'll all enjoy hearing more of.